Nature is made possible by the financial support of viewers like you. By Siemens, engineering solutions in electronic components and medical systems, telecommunications, energy and automation, Siemens. And by your gas company and America's gas industry, developing ways to use gas more efficiently for more than 160 million people across America.
This is the sort of dense African vegetation that's home to the mountain gorilla, the world's largest primate, the rarest of all the great apes, and one of man's closest living relatives. But just as we humans have not been very kind to each other during our time on this planet, we have not been kind to the mountain gorilla. We've persecuted it, kidnapped it for our zoos, and shot it just for sport. In recent decades, however, a small band of dedicated people has fought a good fight to protect the mountain gorilla and hopefully ensure its survival. Diane Fossey, for example, lived among them here in Africa for 18 years, sharing their daily lives almost as a member of the family. By the end of this hour, I think you will understand why mountain gorillas inspired such passion in Diane Fossey and others who have taken the time to get to know them.
There are less than 400 mountain gorillas left in the world.
The mountain gorilla may become extinct within the same century as it was discovered.
The future of the mountain gorilla is contingent upon the whims of man.
Since these animals are among our closest relatives, their relationships are, in their way, as intricate as ours, and their family groups have strict hierarchies. Their size, strength, intimidating chest beats, and screams led to the King Kong image. This is unkind and undeserved, for gorillas are shy and gentle and have no real enemies other than humans. Their bright eyes suggest great intelligence, and for the infants, play forms the main part of the daily routine. This is not the lowland gorilla, which lives in the rainforests of West and Central Africa and numbers in the tens of thousands. This is the rare mountain gorilla, larger, with thicker fur, and only discovered at the turn of the century. There may never have been thousands of these gorillas. Their range is too limited. At the last count, there were approximately 300 left in the Virungas and less than 200 in Uganda, perhaps half as many as there were only 30 years ago. Unlike chimpanzees, the other African apes, gorillas are almost completely vegetarian. They need only to stretch out an arm to reach something succulent to eat. It's not only the infants that play. Adult males indulge in play fights, an important social activity that may help to establish an individual's standing in the group. This silverback male, the leader of the group, finally gets the better of the younger blackback male and reinforces his dominant status. Encounters with other animals are infrequent. A chameleon, one of only 2 reptiles found here, elicits more than just passing curiosity. The Virungas are a chain of 6 inactive volcanoes in the mountains of Central Africa, at the point where Rwanda, Zaire, and Uganda meet. The mountain gorilla's conservation area is tiny, some 25 miles long by about 8 miles wide, with another smaller area in Uganda separate from the rest. The gorillas range through beautiful montane forests, bamboo, and alpine meadows up to 13,000 feet, areas that provide a huge variety of food plants. The highest volcano is Mount Karisimbi at 14,800 feet. Serious study of mountain gorillas didn't begin until 1960, when George Schaller logged about 460 hours of observation. Then in 1967, Diane Fossey started an eventful 18 years of work. At first, she was at Kabara in Zaire. Later, she set up a research station in the Parc des Volcans in Rwanda, in the saddle area between volcanoes Karisimbi and Visoki. She put these words together to create the name Karisoki for her camp. Fossey was the first scientist to be totally accepted by the gorillas.
Every morning when starting out for work, I really didn't know what the day's observations would bring. The gorilla only had known humans in the form of poachers or herdsmen. Therefore, it was easy to understand their initial fear and apprehension when I first sought to make contacts with them. These days were a bit frustrating. Finally, I was rewarded by a different type of response. Termed response behavior, it was meant to intimidate, with chest beats and vocalizations. Slowly, over the years, all the animals of Group 4 were approaching very closely, simply because of their own initiative and the sense of curiosity. To have finally been accepted by the wild gorillas was its own reward, and the thrill of each day's contact is one that will never diminish.
It was a young male gorilla Fossey called Peanuts, who one day had enough confidence to reach out and touch her outstretched hand. An incredible moment, the first ever peaceable contact with a wild gorilla, and an experience she never forgot. At Karisoki, she had to come to terms with solitude in the rugged surroundings, sharing the trees and meadows with the animals that freely wandered around her camp. The forest and mountains, which seemed so magical to her in the beginning, later became a source of exhaustion and discomfort. Ill health plagued her for the last 10 years of her work, and days, weeks, even months passed by without any visits to the gorillas that she loved. Just behind her cabin, she made a graveyard for the gorillas that either died of natural causes or were killed by poachers. As she came to know the gorillas, she named them all individually. Over Christmas 1985, Diane Fossey herself suffered a violent death. Her body was laid to rest alongside those of Mawelu and Digit. Following Fossey's death, the Rwandan men who worked with her did not give up. They kept Karasoke open as a research center, running the camp, manning the anti-poaching patrols, and tracking the guerrillas. Scientists from around the world have continued the studies that Fossey began in 1969, coming to stay and work at the research center she founded. Dr. Alan Goodall, as director of Karasoke, coordinates anti-poaching activities with Park Service personnel who patrol the area.
Jana kama tulifanya picture mingi pamoja na mimi na kisha alifanya picture na mimi.
But the primary focus of the work at Karasoke is long-term research on the gorillas and the ecology of the park. A study on the structure of gorilla family groups and the role of the females is being carried out by zoologist Pascal Zicote.
This is one of my study group. It is unusually large. It contains 25 individuals. In this group, you have 2 silverbacks. You have also several females with their offsprings. And these offsprings are going to stay in the group until they reach sexual maturity, after which they're expected to leave.
Leaving the group could be nature's way of mixing individuals and helping to prevent inbreeding. But until they leave, the young males and females enjoy a mainly peaceful existence with close, often tender relationships with their parents and other members of the group, resting, playing, and grooming one another. Departing males gradually will try to form their own groups by attracting females from established ones. Sometimes it's a female in estrus that initiates mating, and the male obliges. A male becomes a sexually mature silverback between the ages of 12 to 15, developing a saddle of silvery white fur and a tall crest. If he's the only silverback in the group, he doesn't have to guard her against a competing male. A successful pairing will mean a new baby in 8.5 to 9 months. Her older offspring, still eager for attention, will have to move aside for the new infant. Gorillas gorillas feed on more than 70 kinds of plants. They usually go for the leaves, shoots, and stems, often stripping off the outer layer to reach the pith. But they also eat fruits, bark, roots, and even dirt, sometimes combining some of these together to make a sort of mixed salad. Goosegrass, nettles, thistle. To a human, many of their food items are bitter or astringent. Occasionally, they also eat each other's dung, an important source of microbes that produce essential vitamins not available from plants. And one further source of food is devoured with gusto. Though gorillas have been known to look for grubs and snails, only rarely have they been seen eating ants. This is the first time this unusual behavior has been filmed. Safari ants bite painfully, and it's only a matter of time before some, at least, find their way through the thick fur to the skin. Then it's all a gorilla can do to grab a handful of the delicacy and run. The gorillas range throughout the volcanoes, and it's part of the research at Karasoke to make daily checks on the whereabouts and welfare of 3 of the groups. One of these, of which Peanuts is the leader, is on Mount Karasimbi at a height of almost 13,000 feet. After that first magical encounter with Diane Fossey, Peanuts went on to become a silverback. Now he's with his group in the subalpine zone. Up here, the vegetation is completely different, and some of the plants become giants. It's a difficult place to track gorillas because they don't leave much of a trail. So, unless it's known roughly where they were the day before, there may be little hope of finding them at all. An outstanding tracker for many years, Name Alphonse, accompanied by Alan Goodall, hopes to find Peanuts and his group.
We've just found the night nests where they slept last night. So let's go and have a closer look. It may seem a strange habit, but gorillas always defecate inside their nests. I'm not sure whose nest this is, but judging by some of the hairs here, it looks as though it could be the nest of the silverback. All we've got to do now is find today's trail and follow that to where they are. To Gendi.
Normally, from the night nest, there's a trail of broken plant material and fresh dung leading to the gorillas. But if they don't want to be seen, they can blend silently into the vegetation.
Although we're just south of the equator, it can be quite cold up here because we're at an altitude of about 4,000 meters. It's a popular misconception that the gorillas have been forced up into these higher altitudes by human pressure from down below. But actually they've evolved up here in these mountains and are very well adapted. Their coats, their hairs are much thicker than those of lowland gorillas. They come up here to feed on the giant senecio vegetation and the giant lobelias. Normally they only spend a few days up here feeding on this vegetation. But what's so unusual about this group is that they've been up here for over a month.
That Peanuts had stayed up high for so long indicated that something was seriously wrong. Perhaps it was because he was ill, and the particular vegetation here offered certain nutritional benefits. Although the star of that first memorable contact with Dian Fossey, he has spent a life marked by illness or infection. His troubles began with a terrible injury to his eye and face during a fight in 1971 when he was only 10 years old. Peanuts has an unusual group with only 7 animals in it, and 6 of those are males. The one female will not reach sexual maturity for another 2 years. For some reason, Peanuts was never very successful in either attracting females or keeping them, and so far as is known, he has no offspring. Normally, gorilla groups move often enough to avoid serious impact on any one patch of vegetation. But with Peanuts' extended stay here, the giant senecias are beginning to show signs of wear. These plants are very old and regenerate very slowly. It's Peanuts' odd behavior that's causing his group to restrict themselves to this one small area. Although the gorilla groups range through different zones, some show a preference for certain food plants. 2 groups spend much of their time near the border of the park and sometimes wander outside its boundaries. To keep the gorillas safe inside the conservation area, a fence is being built along certain sections of the park's boundaries. It's an ambitious undertaking that will only succeed through the dedication of both the park warden, Canisius Sharon Berry, and the Mountain Gorilla Project headed by Craig Shawley. The Mountain Gorilla Project was founded in 1979 by a consortium of environmental groups and the Rwandan Park Service. The objectives of the project were to reduce poaching, develop tourism, and increase local awareness of the value of conservation through an educational outreach program. The fence symbolizes the cooperation between the project and the local people. It prevents animals, such as buffalo, from damaging crops, and it also deters people from entering the park to cut firewood or to poach antelope. Rwanda is densely populated, so there is great pressure on the land, particularly here near the volcanoes where the soil is so rich. Many of these local people may never see the gorillas that live on their doorstep, and it's difficult to know how to convince them that they should not use the park's land to grow the crops they need to feed their families. How can they understand why the gorillas should have so much land when they have so little? And explanations are not made easier by the presence of the European-funded pyrethrum plantation, a development project that was granted 4/10 of park land for the production of insecticides. Yet in spite of all this, many Rwandans do believe in their park and have on occasion responded generously in their support of its conservation. Craig Shawley believes very strongly in supporting the needs of the people and striking a balance between them and conservation. But there's no room for error with the tiny population of mountain gorillas living in such close proximity to people. It's a conservation dilemma that's becoming all too familiar throughout the world. The future of the land and all its native animals and plants teeters on a knife edge.
This particular part of the forest is an interesting place. 4 years ago, there were cattle grazing here. It was part of a cattle project used by the Rwandan government. A year before that, there were gorillas ranging here. Realizing the importance of the forest to the gorillas, we convinced the local community to donate the land back to the park. Now gorillas are ranging in this area again. 55 hectares have been reclaimed.
Such positive conservation steps offer a glimmer of hope for the remaining 500 or so mountain gorillas. The bamboo that was cut will regenerate. More bamboo shoots. For some groups, a favorite food. The gorillas are remarkably consistent in their tastes. Most of their diet consists of foliage of herbs, vines, and shrubs, which are available all year round. Of all the important food plants, only bamboo shoots are seasonal, but when they are available, the gorillas gorge themselves. An adult female will eat about 40 pounds in a day, but an adult silverback, twice the size, will put away an incredible 75 pounds of food. It's no wonder that gorillas have pot bellies and occasional digestive problems. Feeding is interrupted by frequent rest periods, a good time for socializing.
Today we're on the slopes of Mount Karasimbi. This is the range of the Sousa group. As far as we know, it's the largest group of mountain gorillas in the world. Yesterday there were 29, today there are 30.
In all the years that people have been studying mountain gorillas, no one has ever observed a birth in the wild. So it's a very rare privilege to see a baby so young, maybe only 2 or 3 hours old. The umbilical cord is still attached, and its fur is not yet dry.
The birth of this new baby came as quite a surprise to me this morning. In addition to this female, there are several other females in the group that may be potentially pregnant. Also, there are 2 large adult silverbacks, both of whom share leadership responsibilities. But in the future, there may be a dilemma. Because of that, the group may split. We sit back and wait and watch the dynamics of the group and wonder what will happen.
The tenderness between mother and newborn infant is obvious. It's not her first baby. She's experienced and quite high-ranking in the group, which will increase the new infant's chances of survival. One-quarter of all babies may die within the first few years of their lives because of weakness or disease. A first-time mother can lose her baby by not being able to produce enough milk. Happily, though, there is no such problem for this one. The silverback will protect infants and females from obvious sources of danger, but the mother also has to be protective. New infants attract a lot of attention from the other gorillas, and if she's not careful, the baby could be injured or killed through rough handling by other members of the group. They may only want to touch the baby, but even that is just not allowed. An adolescent wanting to play can be very persistent and may not realize its own strength, but an experienced mother can fend off such potentially dangerous encounters. It's remarkable that a population so small has not yet shown serious signs of inbreeding. The gorillas actually seem to have developed some resistance to such problems. But if their numbers decline any further, inbreeding could pose a threat to the entire population. In a world already loaded against them, visits to the bamboo zone near the park border can be extremely dangerous. It's here that poachers set their traps, using springy stems to power snares, which they set primarily for 2 kinds of antelope, bushbuck and duiker. To help the guerrillas, experienced anti-poaching teams run daily patrols through the forest. Park Service and Mountain Gorilla Project personnel have been doing this difficult work for many years. They have an amazing ability to spot snares, often set in lines along animal trails.
Ça c'était hier.
Non, ça, je pense que c'est pour hier. Non, c'est ce matin.
C'est ce matin, oui. C'est
Ce matin.
Ok. On va le couper. On va chercher des autres coupés.
From the 1960s until 1984, gorillas were killed by poachers to service a macabre tourist trade in gorilla parts, hands for ashtrays, and heads as souvenirs. But even though that has been stopped, the gorillas still suffer. In 1988 alone, patrols found and cut 2,600 antelope traps. Gorillas have been removed from snares and treated. Some survive, but a snare inflicts a terrible wound. It can cost a gorilla a hand, and death may follow if gangrene takes hold. This scene was recorded on video by Craig Shalley and shows gorillas playing with a snare, which fortunately had been triggered without doing any harm. This male was lucky. A snare cost him his hand, but he manages quite well using the remaining one. Suzanne Abelgard, a veterinarian, checks on the gorilla's general welfare.
I monitor 7 groups of habituated gorillas, and I try and visit each group about once every 2 weeks. Sometimes working here can be hard, climbing up and down volcanoes, getting home, soaking wet, cold, hungry. But I have to admit that it's all worthwhile in the end.
The work is rewarding, but inevitably there are depressing days when tragedy strikes.
I can see the baby. It definitely looks like it's dead.
Yeah, there doesn't appear to be any movement there whatsoever.
But she's still holding it in a pretty normal position.
She's holding it normally.
Mbele, a young female, has had her first baby and lost it. It was just 4 days old. It's a sad day when a gorilla dies. When a mother loses a baby, it is quite normal for her to continue carrying the body as if it were still alive for 2, even 3 days. Craig and Suzanne stay with her, hoping to collect the body for an autopsy if she drops it. As time passes, Mbele puts down the body of her baby more and more frequently. To reassure her, Craig imitates the calming sounds gorillas use when among each other.
She seems to be feeding now, so maybe we should just stay back a bit and not push her too much.
I would agree. Absolutely.
Yeah. We should probably stick by her for a while, though, and see if we can recover the body. So we can do an examination back at the lab and try and find out why it died.
The autopsy revealed severe injury and internal bleeding as the cause of the baby's death. Mbele was possibly too submissive to protect her baby from the eager attentions of the other gorillas, and it seems likely that the baby died as a result of injury by another group member. In heavy rainfall, which is frequent, the gorillas stop feeding. The adults sit motionless, but sometimes the infants can't contain themselves. As the afternoon draws on and the rain abates, the gorillas build their nests for the night. And as dusk falls, local villagers gather in a square to see a film about gorillas. It is part of the conservation education program organized by the Mountain Gorilla Project, the Park Service, and the U.S. Peace Corps. It's a popular and regular event designed to arouse interest in the park and its animals, and to keep the people up to date with any news. The film showings have been very successful in promoting conservation, and there has been a steady increase in the number of Rwandans who believe there is a benefit in keeping the park. Dawn over Makeno. At the edge of the park, a group of 6 tourists assembles.
For simple behavior in the forest and also behavioral things with the gorillas. Right here is the limit of the park and the forest. Once we go into the forest, we ask you to talk softly. Obviously, the quieter we are, the better chances there are of seeing other wildlife, such as duiker, bushbuck, buffalo, maybe some golden monkeys, and a wide variety of bird life. Okay, once we get to the gorillas, we want to stay again in a tight group, staying behind the guides and or myself, okay? And we really want to keep a distance, a minimal distance of 5 meters between the gorillas and ourselves. This is our biggest defense mechanism against disease transmission to the gorillas. The gorillas are closely enough related to us that they're very susceptible to human diseases, but yet they are not at all resistant. In addition, at 5 meters, we are not imposing upon the gorillas, so it allows you a better chance to see their natural behavior.
The tourists spend only 1 hour with the gorillas, but there's rarely any disappointment. This group has 13 animals, 1 adult male silverback, 5 adult females, 5 juveniles, and 2 young infants. The tourists are helping gorilla conservation by bringing money to the park. Little do the gorillas know that by tolerating the visitors, they are safeguarding their future, for they are now a valuable asset to Rwanda. The hour expires, the tourists depart, and the forest belongs to the gorillas once more. The difficult question is, how far can conservation management be taken? The future of the mountain gorillas is still uncertain. But to what extent should we interfere with wild animals in order to save them? Every step can and does raise new problems. Do frequent visits by people upset natural behavior patterns? How great is the risk of transmitting human disease? Should the vet intervene to help weak or sickly animals? Do we actually know enough to do what we're doing? For now, every management strategy is considered, and research continues to further knowledge not only of the gorillas, but of the park as a whole. Andrew Plumtree is a research biologist based at Karasoke. His project is to study 5 of the species of herbivores in the park, like these Cape buffalo. He monitors their impact on food plants to find out how much they compete, especially with the gorillas. Another study is looking at the rare and beautiful golden monkeys, a subspecies of guenon, which are found only in the Virunga Mountains and 2 other forests nearby. Little is known about these monkeys, and this is the first time they have been filmed. Shane Parkhill has spent months trying to get close enough to them to find out about their feeding habits. The golden monkeys eat, among other things, bamboo shoots, just as the gorillas do. But so far, competition does not seem to be a problem. Bamboo is so plentiful that there is enough for both the gorillas and the monkeys. Mikeno, the oldest Virunga volcano, now extinct. But 2 other volcanoes are still active. There are signs to suggest that volcanic activity in the whole region is increasing. This is a new cone on the flanks of an active volcano in adjacent Zaire. It erupted in May 1989, and the previous major eruption in the area was only 2 years before. No gorillas live here. In fact, the new eruptions are separated from the park by a narrow strip of cultivation and settlements. An eruption inside gorilla territory could, in the short term, devastate their population. In the long term, the eruptions outside the park theoretically could increase the natural area. But for now, the park exists as an island in an ocean of human settlement. In many parts of Africa, and indeed the world, the story is a familiar one. Dwindling animal populations in natural areas that become smaller year by year. The pressures are obvious, but exploiting the conservation area will not help the people if the population continues to grow at its present rate. Already, the population of Rwanda is the densest in Africa. 95% of the people live by agriculture, placing immense demands on the land, demands that will only increase as time goes on. Tourism, while not a complete solution, offers an alternative way of earning income. Part of the appeal and presence of these gorillas is the fact that they are so close to us. In their family lives, their lifespan of 50 to 60 years, their inquisitive intelligence. Peanuts, the first wild gorilla to reach out and touch a human hand in curiosity and friendship. His gesture of acceptance so many years ago has helped to change forever the way humans feel about gorillas, a change that is the best hope for their future. While this film was being made, Peanut's ill health grew steadily worse. His group remained with him in the high subalpine zone as he became weaker. Finally, on the 1st of May, after several days of not moving from his night nest, he died.
Nature is made possible by the financial support of viewers like you, your gas company, and the gas industry, meeting America's needs by providing abundant supplies of clean natural gas for this generation and for generations to come. And by Siemens Engineering Solutions in electronic components and medical systems, telecommunications, energy, and automation. Siemens.
This is PBS.